Hello everyone, today I'm going to be recommending you some of my favourite thriller books. So thrillers are a genre that I've always really enjoyed. I have been getting more into them recently because I'm really in the mood for them, and they're the kind of books where I get really addicted to them and I will read several back to back. So a lot of these are very recent reads for me. Some of them I read years ago and I simply had to share them with you. I've also tried to differentiate between thrillers and horror because I feel like those genres do sometimes overlap. For horror, I always feel is much more concerned with kind of eerie atmospheres and supernatural paranormal goings on, while I feel that thrillers are more kind of psychological mystery stories, often involving a crime or an unstable mindset of some kind. So all of the books in this video are psychological mystery stories as opposed to supernatural thrilling type stories. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is a very well-known adult thriller called Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I have read a couple of other Gillian Flynn books. Dark Places is actually the only one of hers that I haven't read, so I'd really be interested to pick that up at some point. I also haven't seen the Ben Affleck film of Gone Girl, but I've heard mostly good things about that, I think, so I would definitely be interested in seeing that too. Brief summary of the story of Gone Girl: if you don't know, we are following a couple, Nick and Amy, on the morning of their 5th wedding anniversary. Amy has disappeared and Nick is acting a little bit weirdly. He seems to be telling stories that don't really add up. We also get extracts from Amy's diary which paint her in a pretty unstable light, so we've got two unreliable narrators, which are great fun to spend time with in an adult thriller. As with all the best thrillers too, Gone Girl has a lot of twists and turns and mystery thrown in there, so obviously if it sounds like your sort of thing, I would definitely recommend reading a Gone Girl. I'm also going to recommend The Honeymoon by Tina Seskis. This is a recently released adult psychological thriller about a couple on honeymoon in the Maldives, and on their first night the husband goes missing, and basically it's just about his wife trying to understand what happened to him. She feels she can't trust anyone else in the hotel or on the resort, and basically it's just about being in this beautiful, glorious place but having all of this dark inner turmoil going on inside you. It goes right back to their past, into how they became a couple. The most gruesome ending ever. Like, I'm still thinking about this ending. It's just so stomach churningly icky and brutal and really, really gritty. So if it sounds like your sort of thing, I would definitely recommend The Honeymoon. Now for a YA recommendation, and that is This Is Where It Ends by Marieke Nijkamp, which I think is how you pronounce her name. I feel like there aren't really that many great YA thrillers, but if you're looking for one, This Is Where It Ends is a great place to start. This takes place over a very harrowing 54 minutes during a high school shooting. We've got 4 different perspectives, and all 4 of the perspectives have a very close connection to the gunman himself. It's so emotional, so hard-hitting, so fast-paced and scary, and I definitely recommend it if you are looking for a great YA thriller read. Also going to recommend The Girls by Emma Cline. I read this last year and it does occasionally do its rounds on BookTube. This is based on the Manson family cult. It's set in California in the late 1960s. We are following a lonely teenage girl called Evie who becomes intrigued by these girls that she meets in her local park, and she starts spending more time with them and less time with her family at home, and she becomes very involved in this cult that the girls are a part of, and it's led by an older charismatic guy. Little does she know that violence is at the heart of this cult and danger is right around the corner. It's very, very good, very, very interesting. I would definitely recommend it if you are interested in true crime of that period of history, obviously in California, or if you're interested in the Manson family at all, because it's really, really good, very exciting. So yeah. Another YA recommendation for you is Monster by CJ Skews. I'm actually going to recommend CJ Skews in general because I've also read an adult book by her called Sweet Pea. I'm going to start with Monster. In Monster we are following a group of girls who for various reasons are spending the Christmas holidays at their boarding school, and there is this legend of a terrifying supernatural beast roaming around the moors of their boarding school, and during the Christmas holidays they are trapped inside the school by a blizzard, and then their supervising teacher mysteriously goes missing, so they are trapped in this school terrified about what lurks outside. It's really, really good, quite violent in places, but I definitely recommend it if you're looking for a good YA thriller. Sweet Pea is an adult psychological thriller about a woman called Rhiannon who has a violent crime in her childhood, but she's gone on to lead a seemingly normal adult life. She feels she's quite undervalued and unappreciated in certain areas of her life, but she has a very strong killer instinct, and she's one of those protagonists who you really kind of love to hate. Like, I fully related to her on like a scary level, but she's really, really addictive to read. A very violent, unexpected ending as well, so definitely if it sounds like your sort of thing, I would definitely recommend A Sweet Pea. I'm also going to recommend a book called Pretty Is by Maggie Mitchell. I read this a couple of years ago. I think it's about two girls who were kidnapped when they were 12 and they were kept hostage for 2 months in a cabin in the woods until they were eventually rescued. 20 years later, one of them has become a Hollywood actress and she finds herself working on a film with a plot that's very scarily similar to what actually happened to her when she was 12. So she reunites with the girl that she was held hostage with, and they basically bring their story to the public eye and basically deal with all of these home truths and secrets that they've been dealing with all of these years. I don't really see this book around very much on BookTube or book blogs or even in bookshops very much, but it is kind of one of those really unappreciated adult thriller mystery type stories that I would definitely recommend. I'm also going to recommend The Wasp Factory by Ian Banks, and I read this years ago, like when I was a teenager, and it might actually have been one of the very first thrillers that I ever read, and I actually wrote out the full Goodreads blurb for this because it just really described it really well, and I think it's going to get you excited for it in a way that I probably couldn't in my own words, so I'm just going to read it out to you. 2 years after I killed Blythe, I murdered my young brother Paul for quite different and more fundamental reasons than I disposed of Blythe, and then a year after that, I did for my young cousin Esmeralda more or less on a whim. That's my score today, 3. I haven't killed anybody for years and don't intend to ever again. It was just a stage I was going through. If that sounds like your sort of thing, I would definitely recommend The Wasp Factory. Very violent, very gruesome, but really, really awesome. I'm also going to recommend We Need to Talk About Kevin by Lionel Shriver, or Shriver, I'm not entirely sure how you pronounce it. There was a film made of this as well a few years ago. This is basically about a woman called Eva whose 16-year-old son went on a shooting spree in his high school and he's in jail for it, and she's writing letters to her estranged husband basically about their history, Kevin's childhood, if they could have done anything to prevent him becoming the monster that he became. If you're interested in the childhood and the histories of very violent people, then I would definitely recommend this. Hell of a twist of an ending yet again, so if you like that sort of thing, definitely recommend We Need to Talk About Kevin. I'm going to recommend another whole author now, and that is Ruth Ware. I know I've talked about her books in several other of my videos. This is her recent release, The Lying Game, but she is so good at writing mysteries where you literally have no idea what's going on. All of her books tend to be about women going somewhere from their past or reuniting with people from their past and something really dramatic and terrible happening, but I just absolutely love her books. They're so addictive. I fly through them, I really do. As I said, this is her latest release, The Lying Game. Her first one is called In a Dark, Dark Wood, and her second one is The Woman in Cabin 10, but they are all so good, they really are. This is The Lying Game. This one is about 4 women who were at school together, and when they were at school together they used to play the lying game where they would tell lies and they'd score points on basically how big the lie was, how many people they managed to convince, how long they managed to keep the lie going and stuff like that. And now that they are all grown up, they've all gone their separate ways, and then one of them texts the others saying that she needs them, and they all reconvene at the town where they went to school together, where a secret, a dangerous secret from their past has been unearthed, and they need to basically sort out how they're going to deal with it. But they're so good, so fast paced, so heart in mouth, twists at the ends of all of her books, and they are just so good, so addictive. So yeah, definitely recommend all 3 of Ruth Ware's books. I'm also going to recommend The Poison Artist by Jonathan Moore. I read this very recently for the Booktubeathon. In this, we follow a toxicologist who has recently split up from his long-term girlfriend, and he meets a very beautiful, mysterious woman in a bar, and he becomes pretty much obsessed with her, but no one else seems to know who she is when he asks other people who she was. He's also investigating these dead bodies that have been washed up all over town, and he starts to suspect that this woman might have a very close connection to these bodies. It's very good, very fast paced, very haunting towards the end. I couldn't put it down. I easily read it in one day, even though it's nearly 300 pages. So if you're looking for that kind of hard-hitting, heart-in-mouth, addictive adult thriller, I definitely recommend The Poison Artist. The next one I'm going to recommend is a little bit of a modern classic that a lot of people read in school, and that is Lord of the Flies by William Golding. I think a lot of you will know the basic premise of this. There's a plane crash and a group of schoolboys are the only survivors, and they basically have to learn how to live on this desert island, and they basically descend into savagery and violence, and it's all about basically learning to live in a place where there is no boundaries when you're used to boundaries. Really, really good. A lot of discussion points are brought up in it, but I'd say it's like one of those sort of modern classic thrillers that I think everybody should definitely read. And the last one I'm going to recommend to you is One of Us is Lying by Karen M. McManus. This is a recently released YA thriller mystery, which is a little bit of like a cross between The Breakfast Club and Pretty Little Liars. 4 teenagers go into detention together, and only 5 teenagers even go into detention together, and only 4 of them come out. And they very much follow the stereotypes set out in The Breakfast Club. So you've got a geek, a jock, a princess, a criminal, and an outcast. And it's just basically The Breakfast Club brought up to date with some murder in it. So if it sounds like your sort of thing, I'd definitely recommend it. Characters who you really, really root for, like really root for. But yeah, I'd definitely recommend picking this up. It's another really great, recently released YA thriller. And that is it for my favourite thriller recommendations. What are some of your favourite thrillers? Please let me know. I will leave all of my social media in the description down below. I hope you're having an awesome day, and I'll see you very soon for another video. Bye bye!